our responsibility to see what are possible ways of understanding that which looks like a discrepancy in such a way that it doesn't make sense. It's fine. I recently was asked a question like this about Bhagavad-Gita 7.4, where it speaks. It's very too long to narrate, but there are different sets of ways to understand the elements. Here's two obvious ones. There's the 8 separated energies. This is right in Bhagavad Gita. There's 8 separated energies, right? Earth, water, fire, air, ether, that's 5. Mind, intelligence, false ego, that's 3. 3 plus 5 is 8. Then you go to chapter 13 and it becomes 24. And you go to the Bhagavatam, and Krishna says to Uddhava, some great learned persons, they've described 7, they described 13, they described this number, that number, the other number, and they're all okay. There are different ways of seeing the same thing, and it's all okay. So Prabhupada writes something in his purport that fits along those lines. It's just a certain way of seeing things. And he doesn't expand upon it, but a little research by the grace of Baladev Vidyabhusan, who Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita commentary primarily follows. When Baladev Vidyabhusan uses consciousness, he unpacks it and says, consciousness mixing with the modes of nature makes so many elements. But he doesn't, in Prabhupada's purport, he doesn't unpack it. But he's just making reference to Baladev's. So what am I doing here? I'm saying there's a principle beside the detail. The principle is, when you read something that looks like a contradiction from our acharyas, what should you do? You don't put your hand on your hips and say, look, this is a mistake. You pull your palms together and you say, my capacity to understand is quite limited. I'm sure our acharya has a purpose in saying what looks like a contradiction. So that's the approach you take. There are some that don't do that. There's some that they like looking at this and looking at that and say, contradiction. There's a term for it. This is a new word for you, the 3 children here. Hermeneutics. What's that? It's a way to understand texts. A faithful and responsible way to understand texts. I'm making a presentation, 2-part presentation, 1.5 hours each for the Chinese devotees to understand. Here's what Buddha says. Here's what the Vedas say. Not for the purpose of defeating Buddhists, because there are lots of Buddhists in China, and the purpose is not to defeat them. The purpose is, and there's Sanskrit terms for these things, Batandi, you just want to defeat them. Then another is Vada, you want to understand. What does Buddha say? What did the Vedas say? So you hold them side by side. So when you hear the Buddha speak, you understand, okay, that fits over here. And when the Vedas say, it fits over here. So now you have knowledge, and you can see through the eyes of knowledge. But what's not wanted is you go to try to defeat them. I'm going to explain this to them at the beginning. It's saying how to read this text where it says there was a Rajasuya Yajna after the Kurukshetra battle. And Bhīṣmadeva saying, I was there. I mean, that's a contradiction. It looks like a contradiction. So how to understand it? There's a phrase in Sanskrit called Maryada Vyatikrama. You can look it up later. Most of you probably have a Srimad Bhagavatam set in your home. So it's Canto 3, Chapter 4, 26. 3, 4, 26. And you'll find this Maryada Vyatikrama phrase where we're with Uddhava, and Uddhava has just finished hearing Krishna speaking, and he knows Krishna is going to depart. He knows because he's so intimately connected. Krishna is finishing his pastimes, and Uddhava is not going to see him again. And imagine how he feels. He doesn't feel happy. He's feeling great anticipation of loss and separation from Krishna. Shortly after he departs, Vidura arrives by Super Soul's arrangement. And Vidura sees Uddhava and goes, "Wow, Uddhava, what are you doing in the forest here?" And then because he sees Uddhava, he's thinking of Dwarka, because Uddhava is very intimately connected with Krishna in Dwarka. Uddhava's intimately, there's all settled here. Uddhava's intimate, kids, you with me? This is story time for you guys. I mean, I'm thinking of you guys when I'm telling the story. Uddhava is so, outside of Vrindavan, the closest person to Krishna, more intimate with Krishna than anybody else, even Arjuna, even anybody outside of Vrindavan is Uddhava. Even as queens, Uddhava is more intimately associated with Krishna than anyone. So when Vidura sees Uddhava, Uddhava, then he starts asking all about Dwarka and the devotees of Krishna and Dwarka. Vidura doesn't let Uddhava know that he knows that they left this world already. Because before Uddhava got to Vrindavan, where Uddhava was at that time, he had been to Prabhas. And the annihilation of the Yadu clan had already happened, and he knew it. They were already gone. But he's asking about them anyways. He's asking about them anyways. And Uddhava enters into this trance. His thought of Krishna becomes so intense, so deep and profound, he loses external consciousness. But he likes to serve, especially an elder personality, an exalted personality like Vidura. He struggles and he comes to external consciousness and he speaks a whole bunch about Krishna, like a chapter and a half. Krishna in general, then Krishna in Vrindavan, Krishna outside of Vrindavan. The mysteries of Krishna are pouring out of his heart because he knows them. He loves Krishna. He hit Uddhava's Krishna button. He just goes into an ecstatic state describing Krishna. Because Uddhava is so vastly learned, Vidura wants to know more things about many things. And Uddhava becomes silent and says, it wouldn't be respectful, it wouldn't be proper of me to answer all this because nearby, not so far away, is an elder exalted Vaishnava. And you should ask the elder. He was deferring to the elder. So this is 3, 4, 26. Uddhava said, You take lessons from the great learned sage Maitreya, who is nearby, and who is worshipable for reception of transcendental knowledge. He was directly instructed by the personality of Godhead while he was about to quit this mortal world. That is to say, Maitreya was side by side with Uddhava when Krishna spoke Uddhava-Gita. What's Uddhava-Gita? Uddhava-Gita is it's a long section from the 11th canto Bhagavatam, where Krishna is instructing Uddhava, knowing that he's going to leave. He wants to prepare Uddhava to be fixed. And then Krishna departs. Maitreya was there. So the purport, although one may be well versed in the transcendental science, one should be careful about the offense of maryada, vyatikrama, or impertinently surpassing a greater personality. Again, according to scriptural injunction, one should be very careful of transgressing the law of maryada, vyatikrama, for by so doing one loses his duration of life, his opulence, fame, and piety, and blessings in all the world. And he explains it again. The Lord never tolerates impertinence of maryada vyatikrama. Again, one should never pass over the honor due to an elderly spiritual master in the interest of one's own personal gain and fame. One more time. Impertinence on the part of the pseudo-spiritual master is very risky to progressive spiritual realization. So, back to the Canto 1, Chapter 9, verse 41, where Bhīṣmadeva is parting. Chapter 9 of Canto 1 is the parting of Grandfather Bhīṣma, and he's recounting the glories of Krishna that his mind is very strongly fixed upon. Parthasarathi is one. When he was fighting against Arjuna, Krishna was the chariot driver. Arjuna couldn't see Krishna because Krishna had his back. Krishna had his back to Arjuna, but Bhīṣma could see Krishna's front. Parthasarathi. There's very celebrated Parthasarathi temples in India. Very, very celebrated. There's ISKCON has its own Parthasarathi temple, right in Delhi, and there's others. So that's a form of Krishna, and it's a form of Krishna that Bhīṣmadeva was absorbed in. He says 5 verses where he describes what he saw. He meditates upon. He's fixing his mind upon that feature of Krishna, driving the chariot of Arjuna. And then here, in this verse, he is remembering something that's really important. And what's really important in the pastimes of Krishna? What's really important is the Rajasuya sacrifice. The Rajasuya sacrifice is, it takes 3 chapters to describe it. It takes 4 chapters to describe it. And I'm going to read something shortly from Jiva Goswami that what I'm about to say now, you'll understand better if you pay attention now. So, in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 70, we're in Dwarka with Krishna. And there's a description of, several chapters of what's like to be, what was it like for Krishna to be married to 16,108 princesses, and they all became queens, and he's living in Dwarka with them. So Narada visits and describes what he saw, describes the daily activities of Krishna, and so he's in the Sudharma assembly hall, and there's everybody there. And one day, a messenger comes on behalf of 20,000 kings who were imprisoned by Jarasandha, and the 20,000 kings sent a Brahmana messenger to make a request of Krishna, please save us, because he's planning to perform a human sacrifice to Mahabhairava to please Lord Shiva. And we're the human sacrifice, all 20,000 kings. Jarasandha was a powerful guy. And he was a demon. So Krishna heard the details of their plea, their glorification of Krishna, their plea, and he acknowledged. He didn't reply yet. And by providential arrangement, at that very same time, Narada Muni arrived. Narada Muni had come from Indraprastha, carrying a message from Yudhisthira. And the message for Krishna from Yudhisthira was, please come and attend the Rajasuya sacrifice. We want you to be the guest of honor. So he's got two requests. Same time, same place, same day. So what does Krishna do? He turns to Uddhava. What should I do? It's not like Krishna doesn't know what to do. But Krishna likes to give honor and service to his devotee. He likes doing that with Uddhava. So he asked Uddhava what to do. Uddhava praised Krishna, you're omniscient. You're giving me some service. Here's my recommendation. There are these two things, freeing the kings and the Rajasuya sacrifice. Rajasuya sacrifice requires, before you do the sacrifice, that all kings submit to the emperor. And Jarasandha is an obstacle. He's not going to submit to Yudhisthira. Then there's there's the kings. And the kings can't be freed unless Jarasandha is finished. So the first business is finish Jarasandha. He's very powerful. Commentary says he knows from his study of Jyotisha that he learned, Jyotisha means astrology, right? Astrology. He learned astrology or Jyotisha from Brihaspati. Interesting. Doesn't give I can't find. How did he get that instruction, Brihaspati? It's a long story, but it's not so clear. In his previous life, he was a Vasu, so maybe it was from his previous life he just knew Jyotisha. But he knew from his Jyotisha studies, he knew that Jarasandha is as powerful as 10,000 elephants. That's really powerful. And there's no one that can defeat him. But Bhima is of equal strength. Equal strength. So, my recommendation is Bhima engages in one-to-one combat with Jarasandha. And there's a way to do it. He recommended that Bhima goes disguised as a Brahmana, because Jarasandha is known, has a reputation, he'll always give charity to a Brahmana. So Bhima, in disguise of a Brahmana, can ask for charity. And when he gives that charity to Bhima, Bhima says, let's fight. And then they're equal, but because of your presence, Bhima will win. And Jarasandha will lose, and after Jarasandha is lost, then the 20,000 kings can be freed, and the Rajasuya Yajna can go on unimpeded. Now, Bhīṣma, we're back to this topic of Canto 1, Chapter 9. When the Rajasuya Yajna took place, Bhīṣma was there. Because he says it. Bhīṣma was there. And not only he was there, on that occasion, when the Rajasuya sacrifice took place and Bhīṣma was there, what Yudhisthira wanted to do, it's very important, what Yudhisthira wanted to do was not become king. He's not ambitious. Dhritarashtra was ambitious, Duryodhana was ambitious, Yudhisthira wasn't ambitious. But what he wanted, most of all, he wanted that the Rajasuya Yagya could be done so that all the celebrated guests that would come, the Devas and the Rishis and the Duryodanas and the other people that don't accept Krishna will accept Krishna. Because he'd be the honored person and all the learned persons will accept and he'll be honored. That's what I want to see. And so it happened. And when it happened, there were two people in the audience that really didn't like it. One of them was Shishupal. Right? Shishupal. So Shishupal, hearing Krishna being glorified so much he couldn't take it, he stood up and started blaspheming Krishna, vilifying Krishna. Bhima wanted to kill him. Arjuna wanted to kill him. Krishna stopped him. And then when he got to 100th time, because he made a promise that he wouldn't kill these descendants, he wouldn't, but Sudarshan Chakra slit his head. Bhishma lost his life. Bloody mess all over the place. The Rajasuya Yagya went on. Duryodhana was really upset. Not only that Shishupal was killed, but he was really envious of the opulence that Yudhishthira displayed in giving gifts to everyone at the Rajasuya Yagya. He couldn't stand it. He couldn't stand it. He was envious, big time. Krishna stayed for some longer time at Indraprastha. Duryodhana paid a visit. This is when Duryodhana fell into we looked like land, but it was water. Krishna was there. Balaram was there. And the queens were there. The queens were there because they had come all the way from, at the recommendation of Vidura, at recommendation of Uddhava, all the queens, everyone was in Indraprastha for quite some time, including the Rajasuya Yagya and what happened afterwards. So when Duryodhana fell into the pond, the queen started laughing and Balaram started laughing. Balaram was laughing at Duryodhana. And someone said, "Don't laugh, it's not nice." Krishna said, "Go ahead, laugh." And he wanted the laughter because he wanted the Kurukshetra battle to take place. So the Kurukshetra battle took place after the Rajasuya Yagya, not before. So what's going on? We just read, all of this is to it's like a Sherlock Holmes detective story here, going through the scripture and figuring out what's going on. After gaining victory in the battle of Kurukshetra, Maharaj Yudhishthira, the emperor of the world, performed the Rajasuya sacrificial ceremony. So now, one of the learned devotees explained, and I'm saying it again, that the scriptures and our acharyas are not always so meticulous about chronology. Sometimes things are told out of order. Sometimes things are mixed with other things. Because its essence is, it's not details that's so important. While that's true, I'm going to read from Krishna Sandarbha. I hope you'll enjoy hearing this. What's Krishna Sandarbha? It's one of the 6 Sandarbhas of Jiva Goswami. Who's Jiva Goswami? Jiva Goswami is one of the principal associates of Mahaprabhu. He is the nephew of Rupa and Sanatan, and he was the next in line following Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Rupa and Sanatan, and Jiva Goswami. And he wrote 6-part treatise explaining the whole teachings of the whole Srimad Bhagavatam. You can say many things what the Sandarbhas are. It's a comprehensive, detailed description of all the teachings of the Srimad Bhagavatam. It's like a commentary on Vedanta Sutra. Because Vedanta Sutra is the summation of all the Vedas, and Srimad Bhagavatam is the ripened fruit of all the Vedas, and this is an explanation of Srimad Bhagavatam. It's a commentary on Vedanta Sutra. So Krishna Sandarbha is the fourth of the 6 Sandarbhas. And in this section I'm going to be reading from, if you're interested, you can go find it up, look it up yourself. Text 175, or Anuchhed 175, starting with text 17. So I'm just going to read and then I'll stop and discuss. The hearts of the residents of Vrindavan were filled with unlimited intense longings to see again Lord Krishna. And on the pretext of going on pilgrimage during the time of the solar eclipse, they went to the holy place of Kurukshetra to see Krishna. At Kurukshetra, the residents of Vrindavan were just like chataka birds. Chataka birds are birds that only drink water that fall from rain clouds. They'll go thirsty otherwise. Who have regained their almost lost lives by seeing the dark cloud of Lord Krishna's form and hearing the grave thunder of his words. They went to Kurukshetra for that reason, to see Krishna, because Krishna was going to go on the occasion of the solar eclipse that they went to. Then again, the residents of Vrindavan also seemed to be like poverty-stricken men on the brink of starvation who have just gotten the urgently needed meal that was the personal association of Lord Krishna. In this way, Lord Krishna, after satisfying the residents of Vrindavan with his own association, and after enjoying some pastimes in their company, and after speaking many words reassuring him that he would soon return to Vrindavan to be with them again, Lord Krishna again sent them back to the delightful Sri Vrindavan Dham. So it's Krishna Sandarbha, and it's details about the personal feature of Krishna. The previous Sandarbha is Bhagavat Sandarbha, the opulences of Bhagavan. Now this is the personality. What happened? Okay. The journey of the inhabitants of Vrindavan to Kurukshetra during the solar eclipse occurred only a few years after the killing of Kamsa. This is a chronology argument, or, Jiva Goswami is deductively reasoning that it's not too long after he killed Kamsa. Now, after he killed Kamsa, there's a number of things that happened. He reinstalled Ugrasena, he went off to school, he got his Upanayana, he met Akrura, he met Kamsa, he met Kubja. 17 times Jarasandha attacked, even before Dwarka was built. So when he went to Kurukshetra, when Krishna went to Kurukshetra, he came with his queens. So he was already in Dwarka, but it's not so many years after killing Kamsa. Because the reason mentioning this is, this comes in chapter 82, so towards the end of the whole Krishna's pastimes. But Jiva Goswami is making the point, it wasn't towards the very end, it was not too long after killing Kamsa. But he has queens. Because they came to Kurukshetra also. You remember the queens at Kurukshetra, the queens meet with Draupadi. And they asked Draupadi, how do you do it? one lady, 5 husbands. How do you do it? You put something in their food? How do you control these 5 powerful men? Anyway, the long explanation of what she says, it's just her service mood. Basically, that's her answer. Okay. Although Srimad Bhagavatam describes this pastime, or the journey of the residents of Vrindavan to Kurukshetra, after the description of Lord Balaram's pilgrimage to many holy places, and his arrival at Kurukshetra during the war between the Pandavas and the Kurus, and the killing of Duryodhana, which takes place during the Kurukshetra battle. So all this is narrated after all of that. The journey of the residents of Vrindavan to Kurukshetra occurred before the Kurukshetra war. Because the Bhagavatam explains that Bhīṣma, Drona, and Duryodhana, Bhīṣma, Drona, and Duryodhana also came to Kurukshetra. So it's definitely before Kurukshetra battle. Although it's described as if it's after. The chronology is mixed up. But he's setting it straight, getting the ironing board and getting all the wrinkles out. Because Sukadeva Goswami he's in a spontaneous mood. He's not in a chronological mood. That happens in Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. Sometimes in our Acharya's comment, he tells something much later when it was happened chronologically before. It's quite okay. He's spontaneous Shukadev. So then our Acharyas can set the chronology straight. Now, they don't always do that. And sometimes it stays a mystery. But here, Jiva Goswami is doing it. The sequence of events may be given as follows. First, the residents of Vrindavan traveled to Kurukshetra at the time of the solar eclipse. 1. 2. There was the Rajasuya sacrifice of Maharaj Yudhishthira, during which 3. Shishupal was killed. 4. Then there was the gambling match between the Kurus and Pandavas. 5. Then the killing of Shalva, the celebrated description of which is found in Vanaparva of the Mahabharata. Next, Dantavakra was killed after the killing of Shalva. We're going to hear more about that shortly. Seven, the Pandavas were exiled to the forest. The gambling match. 8, Balaram went on his tour of all the holy places. 9, Kurukshetra war was fought, and Duryodhana was killed. From this sequence of events, we may conclude that the journey of the residents of Vrindavan to Kurukshetra at the time of the solar eclipse happened not a very long time after the killing of Kamsa. Now, there's several pages more. I'm just going to go off on a little detour. I was very curious, how long did Krishna stay in Mathura? And I asked all the scholars that I know. And the answer was, we don't know. Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur gives a very specific number of how long, what was Krishna's age when he left Vrindavan. 10 years, 8 months. 10 years, 8 months. There's some other numbers that are given other places, but primarily that's accepted. 10 years, 8 months, just before he was 11. Because when he went to Mathura, when he was 11, that's when Kshatriyas get Upanayana, and that's when he got his Upanayana. And then after Upanayana, he went to school. And after school, he came back. And then after he came back, there was these 17 attacks by Jarasandha. to get back at the killing of Kamsa, and that the two wives of Kamsa were daughters of Jarasandha. So Jarasandha made a pledge, I'm going to get back. 17 Akshohini divisions. So 17 times he made attacks. So how long was Krishna in Matra before he went to Dwarka? So the number at the beginning is well known. The number at the end is well known. Krishna stayed on this planet for 125 years, approximately. And then he departed. So how long did he remain in Matra before he went to Dwarka? I mean, it's relevant to this discussion. Not too long, because Dwarka was built and so many wives were married, etc., etc., etc. And then going to Kurukshetra, and the rest of this chronology. So the best number I could come up with was something like, and he wasn't married yet before he went to Dwarka. When he went to Dwarka, it was the first queen, was Rukmini. So he was already 11 when he got Upanayana. And how old was he when he got married? He went to Dwarka, and on the way to Dwarka, Balaram got married, and then Krishna got married. Rukmini, first queen. So, not clear. And one devotee said, our acharyas are not very specific about chronology. Same thing. And, this was Shivaramars. I've written my books 25 years. So 25 plus 11. That's a long time. 36. So he wasn't married till he was 36. But 17 times bringing so many Akshohini divisions of soldiers, and then it was finally the 18th time when Krishna went to Dwarka. So that's like 25 years seems reasonable. But whatever it was, it's not written. It's not clearly spelled out. And then 125 years, Krishna left. Okay, plot thickens, get ready. Someone may raise the objection that Lord Krishna's grandson, Aniruddha, was already fully grown when the residents of Vrindavan met Lord Krishna, Kurukshetra, and therefore that event must have been many years after the killing of Kamsa. That Aniruddha was already an adult by that time is proven by the following statement of Bhagavatam 10:82. That's the Kurukshetra solar eclipse chapter 82. Quote, when the residents of Vrindavan and the members of the Yadu dynasty went to Kurukshetra at the time of the solar eclipse, some important personalities like Aniruddha, son of Pradyumna, not just another Aniruddha, but Aniruddha, the son of Pradyumna, and Kritavarma, the commander-in-chief of the Yadu dynasty, along with Suchandra, Shuka, Sharana. Your computer, your printer doesn't have Balaram font. So next time, convert to PDF. I'll convert to PDF. So all these persons remained in Dwarka to protect the city. When Krishna left to go to Indraprastha, Ugrasena stayed behind, some others stayed behind to protect the city. When Krishna took many residents to go to Kurukshetra, many persons stayed behind. And one of those was Aniruddha, the son of Pradyumna. So he's already born. Paragraph. Plot thickens, right? This objection is answered by the fact that both Pradyumna and Aniruddha grew very quickly. And it's true. It's stated. it did not take many years for them to change from newborn infants to fully grown adults. And therefore, there need not have been a period of many years between the killing of Kamsa and the adulthood of Pradyumna and Aniruddha. The rapid growth to adulthood of Pradyumna and Aniruddha is described in the following statement, Bhagavatam 10.55.9. 10.55.9 is the birth of Pradyumna. 10.55 is the birth of Pradyumna. I'm having a great time going through these chapters. For the devotees in China, they don't have 10th canto in Chinese. So I'm taking them through chapter by chapter by chapter by chapter by chapter, filled with pictures, filled with narrations. So I'm already on chapter 72. And 55 was easy. That was Pradyumna. And he became an adult very quickly. Quote, Pradyumna, the son of Lord Krishna, grew very swiftly, and before long he was fully grown. Another explanation may also be given, colon. Another person, one of the direct sons of Krishna, was also named Aniruddha, but it says specifically Aniruddha, son of Pradyumna. This, the second one, was one of the 18 Maharatha sons of Lord Krishna, and he is mentioned at the end of the 10th canto of Bhagavatam. It may be that the Aniruddha who remained in Dwarka at that time of the pilgrimage to Kurukshetra was this Aniruddha. At any rate, there was not a very long interval of time between the killing of Kamsa and the meeting of Lord Krishna with the inhabitants of Vrindavan and Kurukshetra. Like a lawyer building his case based on statements of the Bhagavatam. Krishna Sandarbha. That the meeting, text 18, we're still in the same Anuchhed 175, that the meeting of Lord Krishna with the inhabitants of Vrindavan and Kurukshetra happened shortly after Kamsa, killing of Kamsa, is also confirmed by the following words spoken at that meeting, in reply to Srimati Kunti Devi, who Vasudeva said to her, my dear sister. Girls, who are Vasudeva and Kunti brother and sister? Yes or no? Yes. Yes. So they're meeting. Where did Vasudeva live? Where did Vasudeva live? Vasudeva lived in Dwarka, right? And where did Kunti live? She lived with the Pandavas. They weren't in Dwarka. So the meeting, chapter 82. My dear sister, you know that we were very much harassed by King Kamsa, and by his persecutions we were scattered here and there. We were always full of anxieties. Only in the last few days have we returned to our own places by the grace of God. Text 19. We may also conclude that the meeting at Kurukshetra happened not long after the killing of Kamsa, because Draupadi asked the different queens of Krishna how they had accepted the Lord's hand in marriage. That Draupadi was just then learning about Krishna's marriages indicates that the meeting at Kurukshetra happened soon after the killing of Kamsa. Now, there had to be time for them to get married before they got married. And then some time in Matra before he went to Dwarka to marry them. So sometime, but not too long. It was also before the Rajasuya sacrifice that Uddhava, listen to this, it was also before the Rajasuya sacrifice, that Uddhava delivered Krishna's message to the gopis. Chapter 46. I mean, quite some time before. Where Krishna told the gopis, Lord Krishna will soon return to Brajabhumi. After the meeting at Kurukshetra, Krishna became full of anxiety. As he remembered the sufferings of the residents of Vrindavan and their separation from him, he personally sent Uddhava to see them. Now, he could be in anxiety about how they're doing before the visit to Kurukshetra. But he sent them. Anyway. He personally sent Uddhava to see them, and when Uddhava saw the condition of the resident of Braja, he also became full of anxiety about their condition. Uddhava's delivery of Lord Krishna's message to the gopis occurred before the Rajasuya sacrifice, for he mentioned them when he advised Krishna to kill Jarasandha and attend the Rajasuya sacrifice. Chapter 71. So we're in Dwarka. Here's the messenger of the 20,000 kings. Here comes Narada inviting Krishna to the Rajasuya. Uddhava's consulted. Uddhava said he knew about the gopis' separation because he had already been to visit them, and they're feeling great separation from you. He says, my dear Lord, when Jarasandha is killed, then the queens of all the imprisoned kings will be so joyful at their husbands being released by your mercy that they will all begin to sing your glories. They will be as pleased as the gopis were when they were relieved from the hands of Shankatasura. It's without the diacritics I can't read. What was the demon's name that tried to take the gopis away? Shankachuda? Shankasura. Okay. All the great sages, the king of elephants, Gajendra, the goddess of fortune, Sita, and even your father and mother were all delivered by your causeless mercy. We have been thus delivered. We also have been thus delivered, and we are always singing the transcendental glories of your activity. So, what's he doing here? He is explaining the springboard for him is, when did the visit to Kurukshetra take place? What was the chronology? Because it's not clear. It's narrated very late, as he said. It's narrated after Balaram's this and that and the other thing. But it took place way before those things. It's narrated out of chronological sequence. And all of this is connected to responding to 1.9.41, and there was 2 Rajasuya sacrifices, apparently. Text 22. After the Rajasuya sacrifice had been concluded, and after the demons Shalva and Dantavakra were killed, Lord Krishna quickly returned to Gokula. This is described in the following prose and verse passage from the Uttarakhanda of Padma Purana. So I'll read it, but I'll summarize it first. Padma Purana is really clear. Where it's not in the Bhagavatam, Padma Purana is very clear that after killing of Dantavakra, Krishna went to Dwarka, went to Vrindavan. After Krishna didn't. Why did Krishna not go back to Vrindavan? There's many explanations. One of those many explanations is he knew that if he did go back to Vrindavan, the residents of Vrindavan would be harassed by the remaining demons. They would know that they're dear to Krishna, so they would go harass them, and who knows what they would do. So he waited, because he told the gopis, I have some more demons to kill, and then I'll come, which is what he did. But he had to kill the demons. And the remaining demon, Dantavakra and his brother. And then he went. So here's what it says in Padma Purana. That when was Shishupal killed? Shishupal was killed during the Rajasuya Yagya. He started offending Krishna and Krishna chopped him. Hearing that Shishupal had been killed by Krishna, Dantavakra arrived at Mathura to fight the Lord. And when Lord Krishna heard about this, he mounted a chariot and he went to Matra to fight with the demon. Krishna and Dantavakra remained at the entrance of Mathura and fought day and night for a long time. In the midst of this battle, Krishna struck Dantavakra so heavily with his club that the demon immediately fell dead to the ground, all his limbs crushed by the force of Krishna's blow. He seemed like a great mountain, smashed to pieces by a powerful bolt of lightning. Because he was killed by Krishna, the demon Dantavakra attained a spiritual form like the Lord's and entered the eternal and blissful spiritual world, which is only approached by the perfect yogis. Dantavakra and Shishupal had actually been gatekeepers of Vaikuntha, and their names were Jai and Vijay. On the pretext of being cursed by the four Kumaras, they had descended to the material world for 3 lifetimes in order to facilitate the pastimes of the personality of Godhead. Now that these 3 lifetimes were completed, they were killed by the Lord, and they attained liberation, returning to the original post in the spiritual world. Now what we've heard from the Bhagavatam is being confirmed, Padma Purana. Right? This, Jai and Vijay being cursed, and 3 times they became demons. Dantavakra and Shishupal. Not Kamsa, he was somebody else. Kalanemi. Dantavakra and Shishupal. After killing this demon, Lord Krishna crossed the Jamuna River and entered Vrajabhumi, the kingdom of Nanda Maharaj. His foster parents, Nanda and Yashoda, had been greatly aggrieved because of separation from him, and he greeted them and consoled them. Tears running down their cheeks, Lord Krishna's parents embraced their dear son. Lord Krishna also offered respectful obeisances to all the cowherd residents of Braja, consoling them with many words and offering them many gifts and costly garments, ornaments, and other things. That's Padma Purana. Now, Jiva Goswami is going to circle back. Having returned to Vrindavan, this is apparently from Padma Purana also. Having returned to Vrindavan, Lord Krishna continuously enjoyed pastimes day and night with the gopis on the charming Yamuna shore, which had many groves of transcendental desire trees. The Lord remained in Vrindavan for how long? 2 months. 2 months. Garbed as a cowherd boy, he enjoyed many delightful pastimes with the residents of Braja and reciprocated their expressions of love in many ways. And that's what Gopal Champu is. Gopal Champu begins with Krishna's return to Vrindavan, and he's staying at Nanda and Jasoda's home, and then 2 disciples of Narada Muni, Snigdha Kanta, Madhukanta, they narrate Krishna's pastimes from childhood on. Every morning they would come forward and begin narrating, and then in the evening they would retire. And Text 26. It may seem to some readers that this account of killing Dantavakra and Krishna's return to Vrindavan contradicts the description found in Srimad Bhagavatam, because that's Padma Purana says something that may contradict Srimad Bhagavatam. Actually, there's no contradiction here, and the accounts of the Padma Purana and Srimad Bhagavatam are in perfect agreement. This may be understood in the following way. So he's reconciling different accounts. Dantavakra considered that upon Uda's advice, Lord Krishna had asked Bhima to kill Jarasandha in a club duel, which is true. That's chapter 71, Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10. So Krishna went. Because, Nantavakra considered, because Lord Krishna himself was not very expert in fighting with clubs. Bhima was expert. So Bhima was the chosen person to fight with Jarasandha. Now, Nantavakra, proud of his own skill in club fighting, Nantavakra planned to challenge Lord Krishna in a private club duel and then kill him. Nantavakra wanted to fight with Lord Krishna alone in order to protect himself from any possible revenge Lord Krishna's friends might try to take on him, Nantavakra, after he killed the Lord. Thinking this way, Nantavakra specifically did not want to fight Lord Krishna in Dwarka, but in some faraway place from the Lord's capital city. Thinking Lord Krishna remained in Indraprastha after the Rajasuya sacrifice had ended, which is true. Krishna remained in Indraprastha after the Rajasuya ceremony. Nantavakra sent a message, challenged the Lord to come to Matra to fight with him. The message came to Indraprastha, and Narada Muni, traveling on Lord Krishna's personal chariot, which moves as swiftly as the mind, instantly carried it to Dwarka, where Krishna had just finished killing Shalva. So after he left Indraprastha, he went back to Dwarka, and Shalva was there, wanting to fight with Krishna. He came out of the city, and he destroyed Shalva. Lord Krishna and Narada Muni immediately traveled to Matra. So Krishna on his chariot with Narada on his chariot. Narada doesn't need a chariot, but Narada joined him. And they went to Mathura on the Lord's transcendental chariot. Parentheses. The place in Mathura where they arrived is still known, even today, as Dwarka Gate. Quote unquote. There's a village outside of the western side of Mathura named after Nantavakra. I forget the name. It's described elsewhere. And the Lord answered Nantavakra's challenge and killed him. Because Vrindavan is so close to Mathura, Lord Krishna took the opportunity to visit the gopis and gopas there. Now, why am I doing this? Because it's Krishna Katha, that's one reason. And it's a little complicated, but it's nice to hear Krishna's pastimes narrated in chronological order by someone that's authoritative in what's the chronological order. And you can't get any better than Jiva Goswami. And it's meant to sort out this question back from Canto 1, Chapter 9. Was there more than one Rajasuya Yagya? What's Prabhupada referring to here? A Rajasuya Yagya that took place after the Kurukshetra battle. Definitely was before. Jiva Goswami concludes, the Padma Purana's description of Lord Krishna's return to Vrindavan is in perfect harmony with the account of the Lord's pastimes found in Srimad Bhagavatam. This may be seen in the following quote, 1039:35. 1039. Krishna was very much affected upon seeing the plight of the gopis, and he therefore consoled them. He told them they should not be aggrieved. He was coming back very soon after finishing his business. Well, it wasn't so soon. It wasn't so long either. Lord Krishna's promise to return to Vrindavan is also recorded in the following verse, chapter 45, spoken by the Lord to Nanda and Yashoda, shortly after Krishna had killed Kamsa. This is a message carried by Uddhava, chapter 45. My dear father and mother, I know you will be feeling separation by returning to Vrindavan and leaving us here. No, excuse me, it's not through Uddhava. This is Nanda had also been there for the killing of Kamsa. He came to pay his annual taxes when Krishna was invited by Kamsa to come, and Krishna killed Kamsa. Krishna sending Nanda back. A message from Nanda and Jasoda. My dear father and mother, I know you'll be feeling separation by returning to Vrindavan and leaving us here, but please rest assured that I will soon come back to Vrindavan just after giving some satisfaction to my real father and mother, Vāsudeva and Devaki, my grandfather, and other relatives and family members. There's other references where Krishna had promised, and the statements Krishna keeps his promise. Okay, so summary. As with the non-chronological order of narration of activities of Krishna by Shukadeva Goswami, right in Srimad Bhagavatam, the Puranas are not necessarily chronological. They're very logical, or they're very devotional, but they're not necessarily chronological. There's largely, but not in all circumstances. And sometimes pastimes are mixed with other pastimes without making anything about separating them. Neither chronologically nor even, one pastime here, another pastime there, and being told as if there's one pastime. Sometimes that happens. And so that's the explanation that I came up with. I'll read it again. After gaining victory in the battle of Kurukshetra, this is 1.9.41, purport, first sentence. After gaining victory in the battle of Kurukshetra, Maharaj Yudhishthira, the emperor of the world, performed the Rajasuya sacrificial ceremony. Well, there could have been two. The second one, if there was a second one, Bhīṣmadeva wasn't attending because he's on a bed of arrows lying on the battlefield of Kurukshetra after the Kurukshetra battle. So if there's a second Rajasuya Yagya, it would make sense because there's the anointing of the incumbent king, but he wasn't yet the king. The formal establishing of his king could have taken place when he actually became king after the Kurukshetra battle, and the rest of the Kuru dynasty were finished, and all that's remaining is Yudhishthira and the Pandavas. And it's a fact, earlier in this chapter 9 of Canto 1, he had been installed as king. And that's one of the things that they wanted to do, is come to the place where Bhīṣmadeva was lying in his bed of arrows, because they knew he would be very happy. If they came in all their royal attire, he would be very happy because he wanted to see them become king. Imagine how conflicted he was. He's fighting against those who he was the father for, or the grandfather, who loved him and he loved them, and he's fighting against them. For what reason? On the pretext of a religious principle? So one could say, he was naughty. He made a mistake. He made a big boo-boo. He shouldn't have fought. Okay, there was a religious principle that he was observing, and that is, he was being maintained by the royal family. So now he's obliged to be on the side of the royal family, those who have been maintaining him. And that's the dharmic principle. However, there's other higher dharmic principles. And he could have, should have, but he didn't follow those higher dharmic principles. apparently. But apparently only because he was doing what Krishna wanted. What did Krishna want? Krishna wanted his chivalrous disposition to meet another chivalrous person of great caliber. Bhīṣmadeva is a greatly chivalrous person. Powerful. Bhīṣmadeva was so powerful that Parshuram couldn't defeat him. After so many days, whatever the number of days was, 25 days, something like that, fighting, a voice from the sky said to Parshuram, you won't be able to defeat him. So just drop your weapons. So he dropped his weapons. And Bhīṣma came and fell at his feet. Because that was his guru, the one who taught him everything in military science from when he was a little boy. Before he was even known by the name Bhīṣma, he was known by another name. Parshuram was his military guru. Even Parshuram couldn't defeat him. So Krishna wanted to tussle. It's within Krishna is everything, and chivalrous mood is one of the things within Krishna. And Krishna likes, especially he likes. It's said kings would sometimes keep powerful wrestlers in the royal assembly. From time to time they'd just go and tussle, and the wrestler wasn't a pansy. He'd lash the king severely, and the king would like it. No, we wouldn't like it, but kings like it. So Krishna liked it. So Bhīṣma's principal rasa with Krishna is servant. We discussed this yesterday. Dasya rasa. Arjuna was Sakhya. He never opposed Krishna. Bhīṣma opposed Krishna. In mood of service, because Krishna liked the secondary rasa of chivalry. And he satisfied Krishna. When Bhīṣma, it's said in this chapter, when Bhīṣma was piercing Krishna's body with his sharpened arrows, it was, although Krishna doesn't have a material body, we know that from scripture. Krishna doesn't have a material body. And material bodies have veins. And because there's veins in bodies, when there's arrows that pierce bodies, there's blood. So Krishna showed blood. The commentary says that was just part of the transcendental nature of exchange with Bhīṣma. Because Krishna was enjoying the arrows of Bhīṣma as love bites between lover and beloved. And Bhīṣma was enjoying that Krishna was enjoying. And Arjuna was feeling terrible. These arrows that are intended for me, Krishna's moving this way, Krishna's moving that way, taking those arrows. Oh, I feel so terrible. That's his friend. And Bhīṣma was enjoying because Krishna was enjoying. That's why he did what he did. I mean, from a rasa point of view. He was Krishna's servant. So there wasn't, we commonly don't hear about a second Rajasuya Yagya. But what's a Rajasuya Yagya for anyway? After the Kurukshetra battle, it's to establish who's the emperor. Because the opposing party was finished. The intrigue between the Kauravas and the Kauravas and the Vrishnis. The Kauravas, headed by Duryodhana, were really proud and really envious. You remember the time, there's a description in an earlier chapter, long before the Kurukshetra battle, when one of Krishna's sons, one of the first son of Jambavati, his name was Shamba. And Samba had developed a liking for Duryodhana's daughter. Duryodhana's daughter was named Lakshmana. So Samba went to Lakshmana's Swayamvar and kidnapped her. And Duryodhana was really angry. So he went chasing after Samba. Samba was a powerful fighter. By divine arrangement, Samba wasn't killed, but Samba was tied up and brought back and put in prison. Narada Muni brought the news. Samba's missing. You know where he is? He's in Duryodhana's prison in Hastinapur. Ugrasena was on a warpath. Gather the entire Vrishni army. We're going to go at once. And they started making arrangements immediately. Balaram, the peacemaker, said, let me make peace. I'll take some ministers with me. I'm good at peacemaking. I have a relationship with Duryodhana. I'll make things nice. So he went. And they established a camp outside the city. Messenger went in. Balaram is visiting your capital city. So they sent gifts and a whole entourage and rah. And then they asked, what is it that brought you here? He said, I want Samba. I want Samba to marry Lakshmana in a grand style. And they were so insulting. The ministers and representatives of Duryodhana, not Duryodhana, but in his mood. Who are these people? They're so proud. They're nothing. They're only something because we gave them something. We're the rulers, and see you later. They insulted Balaram and the Vrishnis. That was the wrong thing to do. So Balaram took his plow and started dragging the whole city of Hastinapur in pieces to drag it into the vast Ganga flowing nearby. They realized they made a big mistake. They came out, apologized profusely. Samba and Lakshmana were married. But the Kauravas were very proud and very envious. They had very bad qualities. They had bad qualities because they were disconnected from Krishna. Or say it the other way. Those that are connected to Krishna become decorated with good qualities. So it's our responsibility as becoming devotees of Krishna to develop good qualities. And one of those good qualities, circling back at this whole effort that I made today, to what's the answer to this? 2 Rajasuya Yagyas. How to understand this? Because we can't come before our founder Acharya and say, he made a mistake. He's just combining events and, in a way that he's entitled to combine events without explaining everything to us. Why not? And things are not necessarily put together in chronological order. So if we're looking for discrepancy, we don't understand because it says this here, it says that there. Be patient. There's some explanation. And it's our responsibility to look for an explanation. This is hermeneutics. It's our responsibility to look for an explanation that says there are different ways of looking at things. And it's quite okay to look at things in different ways. Like Krishna is saying to Uddhava, the people that describe the elements of material nature, he lists. And then the commentary, Bhakti Siddhanta, you can imagine, goes into those lists of some say this number, some say that number, some say the other number, and they're all right. Our little binary processor mind says you can't have so many things that are all right when they say something different. It bounces. It can't be right. But transcendentalists can see that there's different ways of looking at the same thing, and they're both right, or several things are right. It takes a little bit of maturity to reach that point, but that's part of the reason I'm spending all this time on this topic. When we're reading Bhagavatam, and even reading Bhagavad-Gita, when you're reading Bhagavatam and Bhagavad-Gita, try to understand the essence. And if Krishna says over here there's 24 elements, and Krishna says over there's 8 elements, it's quite okay. It's quite okay. It's just a different way of looking at the same thing. So I didn't even read anything from Canto 1, Chapter 9, except for that one sentence. But I've taken a lot of time to explain that one sentence. So let's see if there's some discussion. I hope you found it meaningful. And they're nice stories, too. Yeah.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I'm still trying to understand the statement. How should I understand Bhīṣma was maintained by Dhritarashtra? The reason is he had promised that I will not sit on the throne, and he is letting others to rule the kingdom, and he is more powerful than anyone.
Who?
Bhīṣma.
Yeah.
So how should I understand that he is maintained by the king, so he is obliged to fight on their behalf?
It's just a dharmic rule. Those who maintain you, you have obligation.
That is clear, but my question is how to understand he is maintained, because...
Financially, he didn't have to do anything. He's of the royal family, but he didn't do royal duties.
Okay.
He's living in a wherever his residence was, and all of his necessities were taken care of by the royal family. The royal family takes care of royal family members. He was maintained by them.
Okay. As a king, he was not performing the duty, so he is dependent on...
Well, he was living at their expense.
Okay.
Being maintained by.
Okay. It makes sense, Maharaj. I don't know. I have...
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Now, on one side, we hear that whatever is happening is Krishna's plan. And
Krishna's sanction.
Krishna's sanction. Okay. So there are a couple of people who asked me, does it not appear unfair just to satisfy the Krishna's plan to have the battlefield? So many people were killed. Why? I mean, I can give answers, but I want to hear from you, Maharaj.
Well, the demons were liberated, and the elevated persons were liberated. The slate was made clear.
Both are liberated.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the residents of Dwarka, when they were killed, they were liberated. I mean, it's part of Krishna descended with many, some eternal associates, some demigods, expansions, and so forth. They performed pastimes with him, and then they were returned.
Yes. Okay, Maharaj. So, one other thing. I'm confused. How many times did Krishna return back to Vrindavan? Because after Dantavakra killing,
the primary answer is that one time. Sanatana Goswami in Brihad Bhagavatamrita writes differently.
Mm-hmm.
So here we go. There's a contradiction. Is it one time or is it many times?
Okay.
Is that what you're looking at?
Yes.
Okay. So there are different ways of understanding. Avirbhav is one of the ways of understanding. Avirbhav means the transcendental appearance of the Lord, that because of the intense devotion that they have, they see him. And Krishna reciprocates with their intense devotion for him. And that's a way to understand. So that's one way to understand. What Sanatana Goswami says, that's not consistent with what the Bhagavatam says. But Bhagavatam doesn't even say he went back once. Our acharyas say that Padma Purana says that it's not inconsistent. So there can be different realizations by different acharyas. And we look, that's our responsibility to look for how can you understand Sanatana Goswami says this, and other acharyas say that, and it looks like a contradiction. And if we don't have a plausible explanation, we just smile and pray to become spiritually elevated, so it becomes revealed to us. And then, maybe it'll be revealed to us. But it's not, we don't take it as, if it's this, it can't be that. If it's that, it can't be this.
Yes, Maharaj. Thank you. One other question regarding this Maryada Vyatikrama. I was just wondering, when Vidura was asking Uddhava, I don't know. I think at that moment of time when Vidura met Uddhava, I don't think Maitreya was there in that forum.
He was not far away.
Okay.
He was not physically, immediately in their presence.
Okay.
He was not far away. Now, he was not so close either, but he wasn't so far away.
So, because if two people are there, if one is senior...
No, it's not two people there. It's one person.
I know. I mean, Maryada Vyatikrama happens when one elderly person is there and a junior is trying to answer. But in this scenario, I felt it is not the same in that sense,
Well, he didn't, the verse doesn't say, I would be making an offense if I answered. Mm-hmm. He's anxious to fulfill a mission that Krishna sent him. Mm-hmm. Go to the residence of the sages of Narayan and convey my messages to them. He was anxious to do that.
Okay.
And deferring to a super qualified.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Maharaj.
Others?
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. So I had 4 questions if time permits, Maharaj. So we see that Krishna's pastimes, appear to be overlapping sometimes. So can we understand also in a way time is controlled by the Lord and he's showing his divinity through different ways when he coming into this material world, particularly Krishna? Marrying 16,000 princesses and killing all the asuras. So can this also be understood in this way, that he controls the time and it is possible for him to be present in different places at the same time and he can be performing pastimes?
Yes, that's possible. It's not common, but of course it's possible.
So this could be one perspective.
Yes. But be cautious. It's like for example, towards the end of the 10th canto, Krishna goes to visit King Shrutadev. And when he goes to visit, King Bahalashva. And Shrutadev, the Brahmin, is there, so he divides himself into 2 Krishnas. Then it's explicit. He expands himself into 2 Krishnas. But it's not like, that this other... Maybe it's another expansion of Krishna while he's performing his pastimes here, and another there, and another there. To be careful about that. He can do whatever he wants, yes, but be careful about. It's a pretty big jump.
Yeah. Um, and then this could also be like some speculation, Mara, but just wanted some clarification. I was curious, like looking at Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan, he killed the demons without weapons. I mean, he used his body. He swallowed the fire, killed Bakasura with his hands and like this. But when outside we see he's using weapons, like in the form of Lord Ram, he's killing Ravana with bow and arrow, and then Dantavakra with mace, and
Clubs.
Shishupal with Sudarshan. So just my mind went there. Is it like because they are not that intimate or something?
Yeah, he didn't show his divinity with weapons in Vrindavan. He was behaving. He was externally behaving as if he's an ordinary person, somehow exhibiting extraordinary power. And they saw the extraordinary power, those that understood it at all, is based on what Gargamuni said. This child of yours will have powers like Narayan. So he didn't have weapons. He was a cowherd boy.
Yes. And then like this, when King Yudhishthir became the king of Indraprastha, he did one Rajasuya Yajna. So his brothers went in all the four directions.
Before that.
Yeah. So they collected wealth and everything. But then Hastinapur was not mentioned there.
Who?
Hastinapur.
No, he was in Indraprastha.
Yeah, but king of Hastinapur to have surrendered to Yudhishthir or something, because he was king of Indraprastha, so definitely he would send his army.
Good point. Are you saying not only Jarasandha didn't yield, Duryodhana also didn't yield?
Yeah, that was
And not only
mentioned.
that, Shalva didn't yield, Dantavakra didn't yield, and there were other kings that didn't yield.
Yeah. And
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. And then,
It's especially because it's right next door, or not far away anyways,
yeah.
is Hastinapur. So
Oh.
Duryodhana didn't accept Yudhishthir. He definitely didn't accept.
Right.
So where, I don't have the answer to that.
So then the thought was coming that when he became now the unrivaled king of the whole world, when he won Kurukshetra battle, so now is he doing another Rajasuya Yajna for
That's the
us?
question.
Yeah.
We don't hear about it. It's mentioned in this purport in one sentence. After the Kurukshetra battle. So it's certainly possible. We don't hear about it other than this one sentence.
Mm-hmm.
So you're asking about, is there other reference? I don't know of any other reference.
Last question, Maharaj. It was from the third canto when you spoke about Maitreya and Vidura. So in the beginning, Maitreya is explained to be like more on a jnana side.
Yes, but he had Krishna's association, so he got in the elevator and went to the top floor.
Okay. Because later he is like explained very, very in a bhakti.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He became elevated by Krishna's direct association.
Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Who are Vrishnis?
Who are?
Who are Vrishnis?
Vrishnis. Vrishni is the name of one of the kings in that dynasty. Vrishni is the name of one of the kings in that dynasty. So the descendants of Vrishni are called Vrishnis. Andaka are called the Andakas. And Bhojas were called King Bhoja. They were Bhojas. Just names of, very powerful, exalted kings in that previous lineage of kings. If you want to find out more about that, you can read the 9th canto, there's all that list of all the nice kings in that dynasty of kings from the Chandra or Moon dynasty, 9th canto.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare
Hare Krishna.
Yes.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
I have a simple question. How do we interpret the idea of ahimsa, which I consider is a non-translatable word to English? So does that involve one should abstain from self-defense? How do we interpret that in this modern life?
In Portland, I had this extended discussion on this topic with a young man, young American. No, it wasn't from the Sanskrit terminology, but what does ahimsa mean? Especially when we see or read about battles between this one and that one, and it gets pretty intense. And where's the ahimsa in all of that? So I will get to your question. If for those who are by their psychophysical nature protectors of others, those who are protectors of others, they on occasion may have to use some physical strength to give protection to others if those others are being put at risk. That's to be done only when there's dharmic principles involved. In other words, for example, it's consistent in Ramayana. Whenever Ram would meet with someone, he would give them the opportunity for a simple solution to peace. And consistently they would deny and just start to attack. So then self-defense is required. It's particularly for one who's a Kshatriya in spirit. They're there to protect. They was there to protect Sita, of course, but even protect one's own body. Now, is there a place for not even protecting one's own body if you're a Kshatriya? And the answer is yes. Depends. And on the highest platform, for example, what King Ambarish did. When Durvasa Muni sent this fiery demon his way, he didn't move. Specifically, the Bhagavatam says, his hands were at his side. He didn't even go like this. Here comes a fiery demon. You have to think about it. You have to be a martial artist to do like that. It's just reflex. And his mind didn't move. It says specifically in the Bhagavatam. And what was his offense? Nothing. He followed the Brahmanas that said, you're to break the Dwadasi, so take a sip of water. It's breaking the fast, not breaking the fast. He followed the Brahmanas. He made no offense. But Durvasa Muni was angered. So, are there occasions for a Kshatriya to not defend oneself? Yes. Generally speaking, however, Kshatriyas will defend not just themselves, but they'll defend others. And it's not a violation of ahimsa. Because, in the transcendental sense, when there's principles of dharma being upheld, that when there's force that's being used, that's not in contradiction to ahimsa. The material picture is ahimsa means passive. You don't do anything. Someone attacks you, you don't do anything. That's the material picture. The spiritual picture is we're servants of Krishna, and as servants of Krishna, we act only on behalf of Krishna. When there's a cause that's in violation of Krishna's principles, you act. And you don't act with force or violence when there's nothing to do with Krishna's principle of Krishna, pleasing or serving Krishna. You don't. That's the transcendental picture of ahimsa. So I think that answers your question. Okay. Okay. Anybody else? You have something? Okay. You have a big smile.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Why is Shishupal a demon?
Why is Shishupal a demon? Well, why is anybody, what's the definition of a demon? Asura. There's Sura and Asura. Asura, the demons, they're opposed to God. They're anti-God. That's a demon. And Shishupal was in that category. He despised Krishna. There's a nice story. We know that Krishna had some cousins. Who were some of Krishna's cousins? All the Pandavas were Krishna's cousins, right? And Uddhava was also Krishna's cousin. Uddhava was Krishna's cousin. Shishupal was Krishna's cousin. Shishupal was younger, and when Shishupal was born, a little baby, just born, he heard the relatives, because he's a cousin, speaking Krishna's name. And when he heard Krishna's name, he started screaming. And there's different kinds of children will cry. It wasn't just a cry, he was screaming. And he continued screaming and screaming and screaming. They tried this and tried that, nothing worked. Get a doctor, nothing worked. He screamed all day, all night, all week. For a whole month he screamed. Just hearing Krishna's name. That's a demon. He was anti-Krishna. And throughout his whole life, he just had it in for Krishna. He's very Krishna conscious. Not devotee, but always thinking of Krishna. Like Kamsa was also always thinking of Krishna. But, why was he like that? He was, that was his thing from his previous two lives. Before he was Shishupal, who was he? Hiranyakashipu and Ravana. He had it in for Krishna. Okay. It's a tricky little device there. Okay,
Hare
Ron.
Krishna. Hare.
Hare
So
Krishna.
this question is also for the same demon.
Keep going. It'll stop.
Is there any promise that Krishna gave Shishupal because he was killed until he did 100 mistakes? I think there is some story that he did 100 mistakes. And
Yeah. It wasn't a promise to him. I forget the detail. It was a promise to somebody. Give her the microphone. Give her the... Give her the microphone. Give her the microphone. Rather than 6 people shouting.
It was the promise to Shishupal's mother that I won't kill him till he makes 100 mistakes. But
So what
after
was the
that,
circumstance of Krishna making a promise like that to Shishupal's mother? What was the circumstance?
because they were related.
But why would he make a promise? I won't kill your son.
Because she begged, she prayed him that please. She knew that because there is a story that
Now let's hear the story.
yeah, when this child is born and he will be killed by the person when you put him into labs, and then something happened, and then so then-
Okay, who knows the something happened story? Do you know the something happened story? Okay, he's going to tell the something happened story. Say it slowly because I can't follow fast.
Hare Krishna, Ma.
Hare Krishna.
Krishna and Shishupal were their first cousins.
Yes,
Mother of Shishupal was sister of Krishna's father.
yes.
So when Shishupal was born, he had a third eye on his forehead.
Shishupal.
Shishupal.
Okay.
So when Krishna and his mother went to bless the new child, they went to see him for the first time. So one astrologer had told mother of Shishupal that the killer of Shishupal will be the person in whose lap this third eye will vanish. So when Krishna took Shishupal in his laps, the third eye vanished, and mother of Shishupal started crying that he is killer of my son. And she prayed to him, will you kill him? He said, no, I'll show mercy. Please don't kill him. Then Krishna promised, I will forgive his 100 mistakes, but thereafter I will not. This is what I have heard. And
And I was going to ask, but you answered. What's the scriptural reference for that story? You don't know.
I do.
I just heard it. Okay. Wait. Just asking for the source. But you both of you have read it in Mahabharata. I don't recall. You have something. Give him the microphone over here.
I don't recollect the story, but in Krishna book, somewhere this story is
Also
covered.
narrated.
Long back I read. I don't simply recollect the story.
You check.
But it is there in Krishna book.
Okay. We'll report. He's going to research it and let us know tomorrow evening if that's in Krishna book. And Rajabhumi, you get the passage from Mahabharata printed out, and then we can hear what the actual Mahabharata story is. Because sometimes hearing it gets a little, some things are jumbled around. Okay. Okay, anything else? Nothing online. Okay. Okay, the coast is clear. I hope it was meaningful hearing all these different stories. Yeah?
Basically, these kind of confusions will sometimes make a person either experiment it or lose the taste or trust.
Yeah. Well, fortunately, we have great acharyas like Jiva Goswami who can put this together with that, and it comes out a straight line. But not always done like that for us. But we stay with it, and gradually we'll come to understand more than we understand today. Thank you. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.